Hello and welcome everyone to customizing Tableau with the JavaScript API. I hope you all are excited about the topic. Oh yeah. I always like to talk about passion level because the passion level in America is way much higher than in Germany. I hope nobody in Germany is actually listening to the recording afterwards. Okay, so who of you did participate like any JavaScript session last year? Anybody? Some of you? Okay, that's great. Because Jackson and myself, we talked about like, okay, what should be the difficult level for that session? And we're quite not sure. So maybe you ask yourself, how would you rate yourself on that scaling over there? And now the second part, you answer that for yourself. The second part will be, I'm going to show you a short video. And you will see a German. It's actually his first day at work. And I expect you, like that level of being able to speak JavaScript, then he is able to speak English. Okay, now let's have a quick look. At the very beginning, you will see just his manager talking German, explaining him where he finds all the stuff he needs for work.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We're thinking.
What are you thinking about?
Okay, if that is the level of JavaScript you bring with you, then you should be all good. Nevertheless, there will also be parts where you, as somebody who's already aware of the JavaScript API, will take stuff back to your company, which you can leverage then. So I want to introduce you to Jackson. Jackson is my co-speaker for today, and he's one of our dev guys. And you will see like the devs on stage in another keynote today. So for us, they are like the glory ones within the company. And Jackson, the glory one, he's into ping pong, like you can see that in the very top. And yeah, glad to have him here. So he's actually developing the JavaScript API together with colleagues, so whatever questions you have, he should be able to answer that.
Cool, thank you, Timo. So now allow me to introduce Timo. Timo is really into musical festivals. So as a result, in a demo later today, we will have a music festival themed demo. And Timo is also really passionate about our product, so he has his own blog called Tableau Fans. And you guys can go on there and share the cool stuff that you built on the blog. Timo is also super experienced. So he spent 6.5 years working at IBM, and for the past 3 years, he's committed to helping Tableau customers. So he knows a lot about what our customers are doing with the JavaScript API. And he'll be showing you guys examples of those later today.
Cool, thank you, Jackson. So let's see what we're going to cover like as a content for today. So on the one hand side, we're going to build a crazy app which will look somehow like that. Then we will talk about how to get to a custom look and feel like this. And we are also going to see how Tableau can interact with third-party charting engines. Okay, so first of all, crowd participation is required. So I don't know, maybe some of you did already write like text in front of large audiences. So then you might know that sometimes it gets difficult. You get typos just by knowing that there are many people. So we put that we go further. So I'm going to code in front of you, and you definitely need to help me with typos and stuff like that. So just that you're not relaxing and sitting back and not paying attention. So again, let's talk about passion. I mean, I would love to see a passion level like that, really high. But that is like the minimum passion level I would love to have from you. So at the very beginning, we are going to do a level set. I know there are many different skill levels out here, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware of how to start with the JavaScript API. So we are going to embed something from scratch. And then we're talking about give me more, seeing Tableau in action together with third-party charting engines. And then we're going to talk about customer examples. So we are really taking feedback serious. And 2 years ago, when I had a look at the JavaScript sessions, and the feedback was, it's awesome stuff, but what's in there for me and my company? So we want to make sure that we cover that part. So we give you many different examples how other customers are using the JavaScript API. Cool. So let's get started. What is the JavaScript API? Really basic. I mean, it's basically a library out of different functions. And the most basic one is you loading a viz into a web page. And then you can add buttons to it and set filters and like changing the visualization to the needs you want. Well, talking about that is fun, but actually doing it is way much more fun. So let's get our hands dirty. And by the way, that was one of the festivals I visited this year. And so because of the rain, they canceled it after 2 days. Yeah, the next one they canceled after 1 day. I'm not kidding. And the third one, I didn't actually get like the ticket for it. I paid for it, so yeah, but I didn't get the ticket. So before they're going to cancel that session, let's start with it. So I prepared a visualization for you, which is about our Tableau Jedis. So everybody who's like a Tableau public author and has like a lot of views over there should be part of that visualization. So I just randomly took quite some popular ones, and now you can filter down the viz to the needs you want. So these are like the number of vizzes over here. So how many views, not the vizzes, and this is the amount of vizzes a certain author has. And then you can, again, just look at the most popular ones and have a look at them. Well, the problem is sometimes the authors do have aliases, like Tutbai. It's not his real name, it's his alias. So therefore, it's hard to identify that person. So maybe we should create something different to actually see the author and then deciding based on the picture, because we saw it on a blog post or something, if we want to see like vizzes of that guy or not. So that's something we want to create today. But let's start really easy. Let's start with just the single viz we have over here, and let's embed that. And I mean, let's start really basic. If I just take, copy and paste the embed code, and I'm going to create a new web page. Let's just call this one our tc app.html. So the easiest way of how we can embed something is just taking this embed code, save it, opening that up, and then we just see the exact same thing embedded into our web page. Well, the downside of it is we can't add any interaction to it, right? Because it's not embedded via the JavaScript API. It's just the embed code, like you would embed a YouTube video or something like that. So let's do the same thing by embedding it. Who of you did like at least embed one visualization via the JavaScript API already? Quite some. That's nice, great. So I don't know how you start. I'm really lazy with reading documentations, so therefore I ask Google. And I'm trying to screen web pages with things I can copy and paste. Don't tell anyone. Well, so this one looks promising because it's exactly what I want to do. It's just embedding something. So basic embed. That's highlighted for me. So again, screening, screening, screening. Copy code. Awesome. So let's take that one. I'm going to save that. And let's just refresh our page. And guess what? We will hopefully get the same thing what we saw earlier. So that's how I do it. I take something and then I customize it to my needs. So I don't want to see this viz, but I want to see our viz over here. So let's replace it, like the visualization would get rendered at the moment over here. Let's get rid of everything behind the question mark. Don't need that. And then we should be ready to go. And I didn't even read what's going on there. I don't need it yet. OK, so here we go. That's just the basic viz embedding. So when does it get more fun is when you start to add interaction to it. So let's start, again, really basic. Let's add a button to it so that we can filter on something. I could now, yeah, awesome. I love that passion level. I mean, I'm happy when in Germany something at the end of the presentation is doing that. It's like, OK, great. OK, so again, I'm searching for something. So let's get to the tutorial. Because in the tutorial, there are more buttons and copy and paste code. So Jackson, you need to promise that you don't tell like the developers. OK, so I'm running this code. That is pretty much what we already did. And then there's something called filter. And it's exactly doing what I want. So let's have a quick look what it's doing. So there's obviously a dimension called region. And this is like part of my filter over here, OK? So this is the dimension. And then we are filtering on the Americas, which is just one attribute within that dimension. That's exactly what I need. So again, let's copy and paste that. And let's just add this as another function down here. Let's format that a little bit better. And now, again, let's customize that to our need. So that nobody sees that I copy and pasted it, let's rename it. Filter on author. So that already looks like, OK, I know what I'm doing. So now it starts. Do you see that? That's why I'm copy and pasting. OK, we don't have a dimension called region. We have a dimension called author name. And rather than using Americas, let's use a real name. Let's take the shortest one. Let's take tutby. So now I have that function, but I need something on my web page so that I can call that function. So let's do like a basic button. So I'm going for a button. And we're going to add an onClick function, which we are going to call the filter on author function we just defined. And we are going to call that filter on tut, and we are closing that one. So I hope you couldn't see any mistakes so far, but we will see that in a second. OK, the same viz, and now we have a button called filter on tut. Ah, damn it. OK, any idea? Did you already see something? So it's not working. So let's see what's happening over there. So we have a function called filter on author. And we're having that viz over here. And we have a dimension called author name. So for me, it doesn't look too bad. Let's say it again. Oh, yeah. Here you go. So the problem is, right now, that function has no idea like which viz we want to filter on. OK, so let's tell that. So over here, we have a variable called viz. Let's make that variable a global variable. Okay, so that we can call it from everywhere within our script tag over here. So let's get rid of that one. And now we need to define, OK, what is my active sheet? So let's create a new variable called active sheet. And we're going to take the viz, just the viz, and we're going to call a function called getWorkbook. And now we need this active sheet of the workbook. OK, so get active sheet. OK, and now we're taking that active sheet, filtering on a dimension called author name, tutby. Say it again. It's you're too active. There's it. With get workbook over here. Thank you so much. I was searching for a dot. I mean, if there's no one. OK, you take that serious with being active. Thank you so much for that. So now let's give it a try. Filter onto it, and finally it made it. First challenge. OK, that worked. But now we want to give the end user the ability to filter on other things as well. OK? So again, I mean, you already know that procedure. So let's take what we already have and rename that as filter on input. And now I need to have an input box where I can type that in before we get crazy with a beautiful app. So let's start with adding an input box. And by the way, that's the last thing we're going to script. So then we're going to see more examples. So input type equals text. So just that we have a text box. We're giving that an ID. Let's give it the name input. And then we can close it already. And then we add another button so that we can filter on the input function and the filter on input. Let's label that right. So there's just one thing missing. What do we miss? So I mean, now it would work, but not as we want, because we would filter on tutby again. OK, so let's replace that with a basic function within JavaScript. Just give me document, get element by ID, and let's now give that input field. And we just want to have the value within this input box. OK, let's give it a try. We're going to refresh that page. We're going to filter on tut. We're going to filter on, let's take Andy Kriebel. And it works. So we filtered it, and now it's filtered just by that name. But I want to add that name and not just replacing it so that we can filter on more. So that replace looked like I can exchange that to add without copy and pasting it. Really smart. So now let's do that again. Let's take Raymond Martinez. Can filter on that guy if that one is existing. Let's try Andy Kriebel again. It's not working anymore. What did I do wrong? So, well, that looks like Swedish or something. So actually, my computer crashed like 2 days ago, and I had American keyboard. Now I have the German keyboard, so there are no excuses. OK, so let's try it one more time. Andy Kriebel. Andy Kriebel, can filter on him. Let's try Raymond Martinez one more time. And it's working fine. Great. It's already starting to be fun. Yeah, one last one. Thank you. OK, but this is not, I mean, this is fun. It works. It does what it should do. But I would love to see the picture of the person and then decide if I want to see like a viz or vizzes of that author or not. Therefore, I prepared something. And I will show you that. So it's basically a blank web page. And I just have like the guys, like the authors of Tableau Public in here. So if I swipe to the right, maybe that sounds familiar to some of you, then I want to see more of that guy. And if I swipe it to the left, I don't want to see like viz of that person. OK, so let's take that example. And let's deep dive into it. So it's just a web page, and it has like all these different authors as these cards. And I'm going to copy and paste the script stuff we already created. So let's do that. If I'm now refreshing this page, I'm seeing the same thing, and just below it, I have my cards. Now I need to connect this swipe action to actually call the function. So literally what we did before. And well, I already prepared something, so therefore I just need to take like the variable of that certain person and like give that as an input to the function. Okay, so I'm going to add the author name, and it's just a variable. And instead of having tutby as a fixed name, I'm taking this variable, so actually the card itself. And the same for this one over here. Nope, that was the wrong one for this one, because we don't have the input field anymore. So now let's reload that one more time. So if I swipe it to the right, I filter on that guy. If I filter to the right, I filter on that guy. This one is not. This one is not. And then one function I didn't show you is also that you can remove that. I have that in another file, but it works like exact same way. Do you like it? Yeah. Cool. So I'm totally aware of that. This is, at the beginning, just a fun part. OK? So there's no actual value to this particular use case yet. I promise you, later in the session, I will show you examples of like different user input, and there's actual value behind it. Before that, I'm going to hand over to Jackson, who's going to talk about the getData function, which is quite new.
Cool. Thank you, Timo. So now I want to introduce you guys to a new feature called the getData APIs. So how many of you have actually heard of this feature? Wow, actually quite a few of you. Cool. All right. So in this section, I will show you guys what these APIs are and how to use it to build something cool. So some background information. So the getData APIs are released with Tableau 10.0, and it's been the #1 requested feature for JavaScript API for a long while. And there are really good reasons for it, because what it allows you to do is that you, with the JavaScript, with the getData APIs, you can programmatically access all the data that's hidden behind a viz. And in this section, I will show you guys an example with customized viz using D3 later. So what exactly are these getData APIs? So they are modeled after the view data functionality in Tableau Desktop, and you can see a screenshot of that on the right. And the getData APIs consists of 2 different functions, both on the worksheet object that gets returned from the JavaScript API. The first function is getSummaryData_async, which returns the aggregated data for fields used in the worksheet. And that corresponds to the Summary Data tab in Tableau Desktop. And The next function is get underlying data async, and this function returns the data for all the fields that's in the data source. And that corresponds to the full data tab in Tableau Desktop. So whenever people have questions about the API, one tip that I would give is that you can go ahead and look in Tableau Desktop, because the APIs are designed to have very similar behavior comparing to the feature in Tableau Desktop. So now let's look at some of the parameters that you can set in Tableau Desktop here. So you can limit the number of rows that you get back from your database. And you can also have it show the aliases that you have defined for your data values. The third thing you can do is that you can query for all the fields from the data source. And in the new getData API, since they're designed to be very similar, there are actually corresponding input parameters that you can set to query back the data in the format that you want. So now let's go into some more details. So I have shown you two different APIs. How do you know when to use which, right? So for get summary data async, I would think of it as getting data back that's much closer to the visualization level. So the data that you get back is the data that's used only by the worksheet, and it's aggregated, which means you get back the data that is displayed by the viz. And for get underlying data async, you get back rows from the data source. So the format of the data is much closer to what you have in the data source. And it may also contain information that is not used in displaying the viz. So the recommendation that I would make is that if the data that you need is actually in the viz itself, then you no longer have to use get underlying data async, because you can get a much better performance using get summary data async. But if you do want to use information that is not displayed by the viz, but it's in the data source, you can use the get underlying data async method. So I will show you guys a demo with a customized viz later. But before going into that, I would like to give a quick intro to a tool that I used. So D3 is a really popular JavaScript library that is used for data visualization. And with the getData APIs, now you can actually leverage many of the customized viz that D3 has to support and make customized vizes that works together with your Tableau viz. So the process is actually really easy for making a customized viz. So first, you start off with the Tableau viz. You use the getData APIs to grab the data from the viz. You process the data a little bit into the format that you expect. You pass it into a D3 library, and just like that, you would have a customized viz. So I followed this process, and I made an application, and I will give you guys a quick demo of that. Let's see. One second, see, OK. Cool. So what I have built here is a application called Find Your Artist. And with this application, you can look at artists that have attended different festivals. And you can look at metrics that define their style. And after that, you can actually look at a network diagram that shows you how you can get to know the artist that you're interested in through a bunch of mutual friends. So what we have on the right here is a Tableau viz that's embedded on a web page. And there are different metrics that define the style of the artist. So say, for example, we are throwing a dance party right after this session. And you guys are all invited. So since it's a dance party, we want to invite artists that are really good at making dance music. So we can go over to the danceability column here. You can sort it. So now you have a sorted list of artists based on how danceable their music is. But now there's like a lot of artists, and I really don't know which one to choose from. So to help out with that, I actually have a customized filter here. And you can actually filter based on the festivals that the artists have attended. So being around here these couple of days, I've heard a lot about the South by Southwest Festival. So I assume a lot of people will be familiar with that. So I'm going to try to invite an artist who has participated in the South by Southwest festival. So I can apply the customized filter. And as I select that, the Tableau viz will be updated. And from the Tableau viz, I see that Jane rates really high on the danceability column. So I would select Jane. So as I make a selection, here we have a customized D3 network diagram. So this network diagram shows how each artist knows each other. So they're connected based on the fact that if they have been to the same festival, then we assume that there's a pretty good chance that they would know each other. And here the blue notes shows the artists that I might have been affiliated with. So maybe I have invited them to a previous party, I've worked with them before. So through these artists, I can go through a few mutual friends that's shown by the green notes here and get to Jane, who I'm interested in inviting to the party. So for example, I may have interacted with Elliot Godin in the past, so I can go ahead and select that. So with that selected, I can see that there are actually 2 mutual friends that I have to go through to get to Jane. But before actually going through the process, what I have is a third panel here, and we can actually listen to a sample of the music that's made by Jane to actually make sure that the music that we are getting is actually what we want. So we can hover over. Cool, right? So, all right, thank you. So yeah, so with this application, you can listen to the sample, and if you don't like it, you can go over, look at different artists, and you can go through the same process again. So since I told you guys Timo is actually an expert on musical festivals, so I was talking to him last night, and he actually gave me a recommendation, and he said Hard Proof might be a really good artist to invite to the party. But having to find Hard Proof through this whole list of artists is actually pretty troublesome, because you have to scroll through the list and trying to find an artist. So what I have here is a search box. And this search box comes with an autocomplete functionality that allows you to search for an artist based on name. So Timo suggested Hard Proof, so let's type in Hard Proof, and now we get an autocomplete function, and we can select this artist. And your Tableau Viz updates, your D3 diagram updates, and you can again listen to a sample of the music that's made by Hard Proof. So that's the demo. So, you guys want to listen to it? Okay. All right. Cool. All right, so that was the demo. I hope you guys really liked it. And so now I would like to show you guys how we can use the JavaScript APIs to build this demo. And it's actually very simple, and I'm sure most of you will walk out here knowing how to build something like this. Cool. Let me get back to my slides. So before showing you guys how to build a demo, let's get your agenda and pop in a little bit. And let's start off with the pop quiz. All right? You guys ready? OK, so which API do you guys think was used to extract the data from the Tableau Viz? So there are 4 options. A, Select Marks API. B, Apply Filters API. C, Get Data API. And D, Mark Selection Event API. So how many people think it's A? No? OK, B? What about C? Wow, OK. Seems like all of you have selected C. So any takers for D? Any brave minds for D? OK. So you guys did really well, and it's the right answer. So OK, let's take a look at some source code and see how we can actually use the GetData API to extract the data. So what I have here is a function called getData and construct graph. So inside this function, first I set up the parameters that I want to input into my API. So here I can set max rows to 0 to indicate that I want back all the data rows from my Viz. And then I can set ignore alias to false to indicate that I want my data value to show the aliases that I have defined in Tableau Desktop. And I can set ignore selection to true so that we are not limited to the data that is currently selected in the Tableau Viz. And with include columns set to true, we can query back all the columns in the data source, and that includes some information that is not displayed in the Tableau Viz. So with those options, I can feed it into the get underlying data async API, and what I would get back is a data table object. And this data table object has information on the metadata of the data. So you can look at the column names, you can look at the column properties, and it also contains the actual data that is stored behind the Viz. And with this data, we can set up our customized filter, we can set up our search box. And for constructing the D3 diagram, the D3 diagram expects an array of artists. So what I did was that I parsed the data with a
function called parse Tableau data. And after I have the data parsed, I can pass it into the construct graph functionality, which actually construct the D3 diagram. So the process here is actually very simple, and it's exactly what I've shown you before. So you grab the data from the viz, you parse it, and then you pass it into a D3 network diagram library, and that is all you need to create the customized viz. Cool. So you guys seen pop quiz 1, so there's a pretty good chance that you'll see a second pop quiz. So this one is actually slightly harder, so let's see how you guys do. So which API do you guys think was used to update the network diagram based on artists that is selected in the Tableau viz? So the options here are the same. Select marks API for A, B is apply filters API, C get data API, and D mark selection event API. So anyone think the answer is A, select marks API? What about B, apply filters API? OK, some people think it's B. So what about C? Anyone think it might be the same API? Probably not, right? OK, what about D, mark selection event API? Cool. So the audience is slightly more divided this time. So, but most of you still got the right answer. The answer is still mark selection event API. So now I will show you guys some source code, and we can look at how we can set up that interaction. So here, what we have is a add event listener functionality, which is responsible for the selection event API. So we can call this functionality, and we can set the value to mark selection. So what this tells you to do is that you can pass in a callback function, and that callback function will get called based on mark selections that have been made in Tableau viz. And here you can actually pass in different values, such as filter change. So you will actually get a response whenever you change a filter in Tableau. So here I pass in a callback function. And inside this callback function, I would get back a selection event here. And with the selection event, you can get all the marks that are selected based on the getMarks async function. And from the marks, we can get back the artist that has been selected. So we have a variable defined here called artist name, and then we can store it in the artist name. We get back the current festival from our customized filter. And finally, what I have here is a network diagram object. So this actually represents a D3 diagram. And once we have the artist name, we can call the update artist method, pass in the artist name, and the D3 diagram will be updated accordingly. Cool. So you guys actually know the basics for building the demo. Now I want to show you guys the other features that I have shown in the demo. So you guys remember what I had in the demo was a customized filter, so that you can filter on the festival names. So customized filters are actually a really common use case of the JavaScript API. And I'm sure you guys have probably seen much fancier customized filters. So what is so special about this one? Right? So the answer is getData API. So before the getData API, you actually have to hard code in the filter values that you want to filter on. But with the getData APIs, you can actually determine the values that you can filter on during runtime. So now whenever your database gets updated, you no longer have to go into your source code and update the code to reflect the change. The demo will actually automatically grab the data from the viz, and we automatically add an entry to the filter value. So let's look at the process for building that. It's actually fairly simple as well. So first, we use the getData API that you guys saw to grab the data. And then we get the list of festival names from the data. And finally, we attach on an event listener with apply filter API. So whenever a selection is made on your customized filter, the filter will actually be applied on the Tableau viz. And that's the 3 steps that you actually need to build a customized viz. Cool. So the other functionality that I had was a search box with autocomplete. So that actually would not have been possible without a getData API before, because you would have maybe hundreds or thousands of data points about artist names, and having to actually hard code that would be really troublesome. But with the getData APIs, you can actually grab the artist names from the viz dynamically during runtime, and you can pass that into a, so what I used was a third-party library, and it actually sets up the autocomplete functionality easily. And you can search for artists based on, with this search box. So the process for building this is actually really simple. It's very similar to what I have shown you before. So let's take a look. So first, you use the getData API, and you get the artist names from the data. And finally, what I used was a third-party library called jQuery UI autocomplete. And I passed in the list of artist names into this third library, and conveniently, I will have this autocomplete functionality implemented. And finally, I attached the select marks API as an event listener. And so whenever you make a selection on the search box, your Tableau viz will actually be updated. Cool, so you guys saw the demo, and you guys seem to have liked it. And that's actually one of the many use cases for the JavaScript API. And there are so many more use cases, and some of our partners have actually used the GetData API to make something that's actually really meaningful and really creative. So some Tableau partners such as ECOP and Narrative Science and Automatic Insights, they have actually used GetData combined with natural language processing technology. So whenever you click on a viz, you will actually get back a automatically generated report that shows insights into the viz. So it's super cool, and I would really recommend that you guys can go look at their demos. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Timo, who will show you guys some even more cooler use cases that's used by our customers.
Cool, thanks, Jackson. So yeah, let's have a look at some more use cases because, like I said at the beginning, you might wonder if there's like real value to it, and I promised you, yes, there is. So the very first time I got in touch with the JavaScript API was actually when I was working with a customer in Germany. It's a bank, one of the largest banks in EMEA, and they had like more than 200 different measures. And so the consulting approach would have been, well, you don't need 200 different measures, so maybe we want to shrink them down. But I really realized that that conversation was not really helping them because they wanted to put Tableau vizes on their website and let like you and me choose between certain measures. And I mean, we don't even know like what is the amount of measures and what is the exact measure I'm searching for. So what they really needed was something like this, like a tree selector, where they could group certain measures into buckets. And yeah, once you click on that, you just filter on this particular measure to actually see the same visualization just with the measure you chose. And so what it's actually doing, it's exactly what you saw earlier, just the use case behind it. So over here, this is just a normal like Tableau viz, and then this over here is a third-party library, and once you click on that, you filter down on a Tableau visualization. So that was a really cool use case where that made perfect sense to use the JavaScript API for. The most common use case is that one. So if you are having a customer portal or a portal internally where you want to put information like really into context of whatever you're doing in that area, so this over here is showing like a customer portal and the visualization together with another third-party visualization. So what Jackson was showing is that you can interact from this to here, but you can, of course, also take a third-party visualization and yeah, filter that way. And then you just choose on whatever you want to filter on to actually interact with that. And of course, navigate through the whole thing in there and just showing the right viz you want to see in the context. Let me show you some more examples. So this is an example of Mapcase, and they are doing like 360-degree of customer view, and it's such an often like used term. So let me just explain what they're meaning with that. So if you, for example, going on vacation, traveling to Austria, Switzerland, and going for a ski ride, they want to give like restaurants, hotels, and also like owners of apps the ability to track down what is my customer doing in that area. So they're taking all these different touch points, like yeah, mobile applications, web stores, and also like really physical restaurants and stuff like that, and visualizing that, make that available to customers of themselves. But they're not just offering that as like a B2B kind of service, they are also offering that to the end user. So down here, you see an example of a person who was like doing a picture of himself being exactly over here, which is like on top of a hill to go for a ski ride. And then he can actually also give feedback. So once he clicks on that button, there's like a pop-up window, and he can then say, well, I was like the first person over there, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, and the piece was just horrible. So maybe you want to fix that for tomorrow morning or in future to have a better experience. And also that people feel like motivated to do something actively. You can have like medals and stuff like that. Being the first one who was at a certain point or traveled like most of the piece during that day compared to the age group, stuff like that. Yeah, and these are just like more visualizations. I just like to have like heat maps and stuff like that. And this part over here, who is aware of Net Promoter Score? Is that something you're doing at the company? Yeah. So if a person really likes what you're doing, like your products or the company, you can give feedback. And this is just one way of visualizing that, yeah, as a summary. Then Questback. Questback is a partner, or yeah, it's a mixture of a partner and a customer based out of Germany. They are doing feedback. And feedback is a tough environment to be in, like you maybe will be aware of, because there are many open source things out there. So they have a couple of USPs, and one of the things is they offer like real-time feedback in just a couple of minutes. So let's do an example. Maybe let's do a bad example first, because that was like the way how I got like the point at the very beginning when I was working with Questback. So maybe you are aware of these emails once you're traveling from A to B and you arrived at whatever airport, like in Austin. And one of the first emails you oftentimes get from that company, that airplane company, is, okay, so how was your flight? Was it in time? Like, wait, was it in time? I mean, that is information you already have. And you shouldn't ask me about that. You should ask me about like a detailed thing. Okay, it was not on time. How could we have made your trip better? Something like that. So they're like customizing feedback to like individuals so that you feel like, okay, I'm interested in giving that feedback. So for example, if you want to give feedback like internally about the happiness score of your people internally, what they can do is they can set up a project. And by the way, this over here is their own portal. So they can set up a project saying, okay, we have like a new feedback form with different touch points. And then you can choose in the second UI all these different pages, and you can choose like between particular questions you want to evaluate or like analyze. And once you did that, it will automatically publish, by making use of our REST API, a data source which contains like security to all the people who are allowed to have a look at that and who not. And then you can create a viz within Tableau server and publish that from there to an app where customers have access to. That can be a mobile device, that can also be just a web page. And that is like some of the results I was allowed to share with you. Okay, how to do something like this? If you really want to create a custom UI, there's an example out there of a partner called Interworks. And so this is like nice because of that visual effect, like zooming in a little bit. And it's such an easy thing because, I mean, first of all, it does nothing to do with Tableau's JavaScript API. It's just making use of our tab command, getting the PNGs, pictures of all these vizzes, and then putting that on a web page. And once you click on that, it will again just render that viz within your portal. And something we have not seen yet, of course, you can also like call these different functions from within your web page if you decided to make your own look and feel to it. Great. Maybe one last point. So everything you saw today, there will be a page at the very end where you can access like all the different examples. And this is the only example I'm not going to share with Jackson at the very end because it's not fully done yet. Because I just touched it like 2 days ago. So my idea was, okay, well, I kind of like this part, but I would love also to leverage the get data API. So what would be a use case for this one? And you can adapt that to your company as well. So what if I'm really interested in, okay, what was the Beatles analysis? I haven't seen that viz, or all the others top vizzes. So I would now love to just take them and really get like these vizzes in like next to it so that I can actually click on it and have a look at that on Tableau Public. And think about that as like certain products. You don't know the exact product name, but once you see it, it's that shoe and you want to get details about it. So this is the only thing where the code is not finished yet, but all the rest you will see in just a bit, like the link to it. Okay, so we are good in time. let's sum that up a little bit. So what did you see today? So you were getting a level set at the very beginning so that everybody was aware of how do I really embed things into my own web page, how does it work? We have also seen how can you actually make use of third-party visualization tools, how can you bring that together with Tableau, and what are like real customer use cases. Yeah, that is like basic embedding, like also leveraging other APIs like the REST API, or having custom interaction like that tree selector or that swiping kind of thing, or making your own custom look and feel of Tableau server. So before we are getting to the Q&A, I just want to make sure that everybody of you is aware of that. There are like plenty of more dev sessions. So please reach out to the app and search for dev, and you will get many more things, because we were just touching one API today, and there are more APIs out there, and yeah, many things you can do with it. And just search for dev, and then you will see way more talk tracks about that if you're interested in other APIs. Really important. There's like the hackathon going on. Like yesterday, you were able to participate that one, and all the submissions are evaluated right now. And this evening, the top 3 projects will be shown on stage, and then you can applause on that. And the one with most of the applause will win $1,000. Cool. Please also give feedback. Like I said, we take that serious. Just make sure, like really quick feedback, and also like comments on that, what you maybe missed or what you would love to see next year. And that also allows Jackson and myself to have another speech on that next year, hopefully. And here we go with the links. So the very top one is the one where I was stealing like most of my stuff. And then you see all the different examples over here. This over here is like the most important link. You may want to take a picture of that. So this really gets you to a public Dropbox folder, and everything which you see within the dev sessions will be posted there. So take the code I copied and pasted and make it your own and sell it like as a cool thing. And yeah, then on tablofence.com, you will see like there's one thing, I just posted it today. That was the original idea of what we saw today. It's called Swipe Right. You can just try it out. It's really basic right now. So actually what it does, you see a Tableau public viz, and you can love it. Or you may think Andy Kottfried, he's cool, but maybe you don't love it, or you love it. And so you can just take it, and the data over there, and that is the cool part you can't see over here, gets actually stored in a spreadsheet of Google. So if I'm taking like my Easter egg kind of thing, down here I see like a visualization of how many people did vote for it as cool or loving it. So just check that out. I will further developing that and just announce that on tablofence.com. With that said, we are ready for questions.
Are these slides available?
Yes, yes. So the question is, are these slides available? Everything will be available in that public folder. Like, so the second last link, that is like the link to the Dropbox folder, and there will also be the whole presentation in it.
What about, from all the presentations, or is this just here?
This is just for the whole dev track, and for all the others, there's a public, like an email from Tableau, like official marketing. So every session you see, there will be a slide deck or even the recording available, and you will get an email from that. Yeah, and just because dev is like one piece of it, we just put like that Dropbox folder for all the nerd fans.
This may be for the REST API session, but is there a way to go out to Tableau server, and grab the thumbnails and then bring them in to use them like in a control like you just showed?
Yeah, so there's a way of doing that. So one way, like for the high resolution thing, you better go for tab command, because then you get like high resolution images. But there is a way of getting these thumbnails. I'm just not sure if that is also part of the REST API. No.
Yeah, so there is a REST API so you can get the thumbnails back, but you're going to get that back and pass on the browser. It's actually a faster way right now. But I think in the next release or so, we will release a feature that allows you to call the REST API straight from the browser.
Cool. One or two more questions? Yeah.
Is there a way to restrict what access the JavaScript API has? Currently, it looks like whoever has access to the REST API should get every single piece of data.
Yeah, so right now, if you know know there's a toolbar that you can say download. When you embed a Viz, there's a toolbar that says download. When you click on it, it says download workbook, download data, and like all the different options. So the same security rules are respected by the get data API. So if you have, so when you publish a Viz and you disable people from getting the data, then you can no longer call the get data API on the Viz. Does that make sense?
So what do you mean by specific drawdowns? So just for everybody on the recording, so the question is like, how can we restrict like the download of or the use of the JavaScript API? And so yeah, the only way of restricting at the moment is like if you have the right to download the whole data or just like the aggregated ones, that's the same thing which applies to the JavaScript API. So you as the user need to have that ability. If you don't have that, you can't make use of the JavaScript API as well, like for the get data part. Say it again? Yeah, exactly. Like the row level security applies still. I mean, the end user is just seeing what the end user is allowed to see. Yeah, totally.
Are you able to take which attributes you want return back? Let's say, for example, under get detail, maybe the underlying data may have 15 or 20 attributes. Some may be sensitive, you don't want return. Take and choose.
So right now, you can't really limit that yet. So there's not that granular control yet, but you can still control it at a higher level and just stop people from getting the data. Oh, sorry. So the data was that the question was that you have different attributes in your database. So you kind of have like these different columns, right? And is there a way to limit your access to certain columns in the database? So the answer is that right now there's not that granular control yet at the column level. So the way to stop people from getting the data is to stop it at a higher level so they can't get the data back.
When you know underlying data,
Uh-huh.
what's the order in which it happens? So I'm concerned if I have like 20 million records.
Uh-huh.
Does it pull underlying data before the refreshes the database instantly? Or is it the other way around? Or is it happening in the database?
So you're saying when your data source is really big, and how does the get data API deal with that, right? So that is actually an improvement that we're working on. So I think eventually what we have is that we can have a paging feature, such that you can get so right now there's a max rows parameter that they can feed in. So you can limit the number of rows you get back on each call, and you can get them back like on the basis of iteration. Does that answer the question?
So, I mean, if you're using it to populate a filter, right? You need to grab everything. You don't need anything else. But does that mean that you have to wait until all the underlying data is pulled into the browser before you populate the filter?
Yeah. So so the question, I guess, is that when I'm building a customized filter, do I pull the data first and then populate the filter values in the browser, right? So in what I did in the demo, what I did was that I do pull the data first into the browser, and then I do some processing there to get the list of unique filter values. Yeah.
So all the examples have the Tableau Viz on the page. What if you want to build something off of a published workbook? Is it possible to use these APIs without having a Tableau Viz on the page?
Is it able to, so the JavaScript API is used to, currently is only limited to interacting with an embedded Viz. So for using the JavaScript API, you would have to have an embedded Viz to interact with it.
Is there any APIs for the published data sources?
Yeah, so there is a set of REST APIs, and you can publish data sources, you can get back the data sources that you have published, and you can take a look at that from our documentation pages.
Okay, one more. I was not getting the question.
It's a little quiet.
Yeah, so the question is like if I can take that and pass that over to another application? Yeah.
What's the method of embedding that quick event into a dash?
Yeah, so I mean, you can pretty much like take it and call whatever you want as long as there's another JS API or a URL you can call. So another thing I was trying is there was that Tutbai kind of author, and he published I think in Russian. So I was not getting the title of it. So what I was doing is like passing over the title of the public viz and putting that to Google Translate. And there you can just say, okay, here's like my string. I want to get back like the translation of it. Yeah, so it's totally possible. Yeah. Say it again. Yeah, well, I mean, you still have the Tableau JavaScript API, like get data in that example, and then you pass it over to whatever service you want to call it. Yeah. Cool. So thank you very much for your like level of attention. So please provide us with feedback and enjoy the conference. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.